Hi guys, a lot of people find that the bullet guns in Black Ops 6 Zombies don't do enough damage and they're not viable past round 30. But I've gone to round 50 and round 100 several times now, and so in this video, I'm breaking down my 3 favorite weapon setups which are absolutely cracked. These things are so good. For each of them, we'll show you the weapon, we'll show you what it's like when it's pack-a-punched, we'll show you the best attachments to use, we'll show you synergies with other parts of your loadout, like your augments especially. We'll do a lot of augments combos, and as I go, you guys can let me know in the comments section whether you agree with my picks or whether there's other changes that you would make in order to improve these builds even further. Let's begin. Weapon number 1 is the SVD. This thing acts like a sniper at long range, but like a shotgun at close range. And seeing as shotguns are often meta in zombies, this is acting as a jack of all trades that makes it incredibly strong. And just to give you an idea of how strong we're talking, you just get single pack on this thing, and even at gray rarity still, you're one-tapping until like round 13, 14. And then when you end up with it max upgraded gold rarity and you're getting into those later rounds, it's still just gonna one-click zombies in the head. And I mean, you put Deadshot on and you can just auto-aim at their heads as well. Like, it feels so good to use. And in terms of overall DPS, I actually got sent this damage table by one of you guys, a viewer who did an amazing job putting this together. So shout out Florian. But in Florian's damage table, you can actually see it's one of the highest DPSs in the entire game. So it slaps, but it is worth building with the correct attachments. So let's get into that now. For optic, you're absolutely welcome to just do a red dot or something, but I quite like this hybrid. I think that it gives you a nice kind of best of both worlds. And for muzzle, we obviously want the suppressor so we get more salvage, so we can get this thing to gold rarity faster. Then in a twist that might surprise some of you, we're not applying the CHF barrel, because on most weapons, CHF is going to give us an increased multiplier to headshot damage. But on the SVD, for some reason, I think it's because it's a sniper, CHF actually gives you lower arm hit multiplication and lower torso hit multiplication, but it doesn't give you the headshot bonus that it normally does on an AR, let's say. And we're also not going to go with what is probably your assumed second pick, which is the long barrel here, which gives you increased damage range, because it's already got such long range that increasing that further is going to be ineffective in zombies. Like in MP, sure, but in zombies, it's unnecessary. So I would go with the gain twist barrel for increased bullet velocity. That said, I don't know how damage range interacts with the shotgun element of this when you're not ADSing, so I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below if there's any tweaks I should make to this specific attachment. Then we're going to skip underbarrel and we're going to go to extended mag 2 in our magazine. We simply want the extra capacity. That's all we're really optimizing for here. And then for comb, I'm going with the commando riser, and that gives you faster ADS speed and sprint to fire speed, which are both useful when you're trying to just snap to heads in a quick moment. And if any of these gave us faster movement speed, then yeah, that's probably what I would have picked instead, but we can get that from the stock. So we're going to pick the light stock, and that's going to give us a boost to the hipfire movement speed for when we're shotgunning, the movement speed for when we're just moving around normally, and our strafing movement speed. Then for laser, I'm going to go with steady aim laser for the much better hipfire spread. And in fire mods, I think you've kind of got 2 options here. I would either go with overpressured rounds just for even more bullet velocity, or if you have it unlocked, I would go with rapid fire. And rapid fire will always be my preference if you do have it, because it is a little slow on the fire rate as you're playing, but with rapid fire, that's solved for, and the only expense it comes at is a little bit of recoil, which is fine. You can just control for that. For ammo mods, I would go with utility over damage, and the reason for that is you're already one-hit killing so much stuff, or you're two-hitting, and so ammo mods like Cryo Freeze, which are going to give you more damage for sequential hits on zombies after you've frozen them, are just less necessary. And things like Napalm Burst are also kind of pointless, because sure, you can spread your fire to other surrounding enemies when you hit one of them, but if you swap that out for some kind of utility AAT instead, you're going to get that same amount of damage output. It's just that you're the one pulling the trigger, and honestly, it's going to be more reliable. So Deadwire, for example, for the stun, not for the damage, not for any other reason than just crowd control, that's a decent option. Or you could Shadow Rift here potentially, and this would synergize pretty well with the build I showed in my recent How to Never Die Again video in Black Ops 6 Zombies, where you do over 1 million damage to an abomination. So I think both of those would be equally viable picks. Now, I guess the exception for the Mangler haters in the chat is if you just want to kill Manglers and nothing else, in which case, yeah, Napalm Burst, fine. But if you're doing my Shadow Rift build, you can take out the Manglers anyway, even though they're not super weak to Shadow. So yeah, I think it's pretty safe to stick with those 2 personally. And that that flows nicely actually into my next recommendation, which is your elemental pop augments. You're going to want to put on citrus focus so that you only get one type of ammo mod activating, and then chill berry as your minor augment, and that's going to mean that all your ammo mod cooldowns are reduced, and that will mean that the utility that you're getting from your ammo mod is just going to be multiplied, and you'll be much more effective that way. Then on Deadshot, there's some really important augments to select here. First of all, in the major augments, we want Dead First. That doubles your critical damage if an enemy is at full health, and because we're going to be 1 or 2 tapping most enemies here, you may as well get the boost to your initial damage, so you just finish things off more quickly, rather than having to chip away at them. And then for minor augments on Deadshot, I recommend Dead Break, which increases your damage to armor pieces, and that'll help with the fact that those armored zombies are some of the only ones that can sustain your fire, but they can do so a lot less easily if you have Dead Break on. Now, for Stamina Up, I did testing of all these augments in my best Stamina Up augments video, and honestly, I think that there are very few instances where Stalker, that's walk faster while aiming, is actually worth selecting. Like, I think in 99% of weapon builds, it's a skip, but I think in this rare case, it's the one we're going to go for. And then because we don't have Dasher on as our major, I would definitely go with Hot Foot as your minor, so you can just throw out those throwing axes and get those speed boosts so you can get away if you really need to in scary situations. And then lastly, Field Upgrade is kind of your pick when you're using the SVD. I think they're all valid. I think they all work great. But for some of these next guns we're going to talk about, I will give you specific field upgrade suggestions. Our next weapon is the Tanto. This is being used by speedrunners right now because you're so nimble while you're using it, and it's one of the best weapons in multiplayer right now, and it has a very quick reload, which means your overall DPS is higher as well, and you can get a ton of ammo in the drum mag, so it's overall really quick to use, and it does good damage, and it's fun, man. This is a really fun weapon. For attachments, again, whatever sight you like, that's totally fine. For muzzle, suppressor as usual. For barrel, this time we are using the CHF, and that's because it's going to give us the headshot multiplier, which we so desperately crave. Then for your underbarrel, I'd recommend the Ranger foregrip for the extra sprinting movement speed, because you're going to be a demon on the sticks when you're playing with this. Zipping around everywhere super damn fast, and getting even faster thanks to the extra sprint speed is a big deal, and none of the other underbarrels give you that. Then for magazine, it's extended mag 2. We want that drum. It makes this even more fun to play with, and the cons that you get with it are just not a big deal. So 100% it's extended mag 2 in my opinion. And then for rear grip, we're actually going to go with the very first one you get, which is quick draw, just for the aim down sight speed. And this is almost a shame in my book, because I really wish one of these grips would let you get some kind of movement speed buff or something to make that handling better, but it really is just focused on aiming down sight or sprinting to fire and stuff like that. And so because of that, we're just going to go with quick draw. Then for stock, we're going to be using the balanced stock. Now it's very tempting to use the no stock for hipfire movement speed and then just base movement speed, but we're going to go with balanced instead, strictly because it does give us aim walking movement speed, and when you're beaming zombies like crazy for a long time, especially with the drum mag, you may as well be aiming in at least some of the time, and we want to keep our mobility in those scenarios, so that's why we're going balanced instead of no stock. Then in the build I'm going with here, we're going no laser, but we'll talk about that in a moment. And for fire mods, we're not going overpressured, we're going with rapid fire, because oh my god, it's so much fun to use. You just put out so many bullets so fast. It's crazy. So definitely give this build a try. For ammo mod, this time round, we are going for DPS because our individual bullets are doing much less damage compared to a sniper. And so we're going to be hitting a zombie multiple times before we take them out, and that makes Cryo Freeze much more of a viable pick. Or you could go with the crowd favorite, Napalm Burst, because that's going to help you with elites. But honestly, I think Cryo deserves a bit more love, and that's thanks to some of the augments we're selecting. So moving into that section here, I would pick either Liquid Nitrogen or Freezer Burn. If you use Liquid Nitrogen, you're going to proc about 30 times a minute, whereas if you're doing Freezer Burn, that's going to give you a damage buff to those frozen enemies. And then for major, I think it matters less, but I quite like using Frozen Stiff where enemies are frozen in place, simply because you're doing increased damage to those frozen enemies, and making them an easier target sounds like a good idea, right? Then you can just beam them down faster. Then because this is such a nimble class, I think that it's a really good one to build around getting revives. You don't have to do it that way. We'll talk about that in a second, but if you're going to be playing the medic while using the Tanto, EMT on quick revive is great because people will keep their perks on their bleed out bar when you res them. And I would also probably go with swift recovery so that you both get a speed boost after you get out of the revive. And I'd probably combo that with using the Ether Shroud field upgrade. And with that, you could do extra charge, for instance, so you get max charges increased. And Group Shroud is also a pretty cool one, so you can cloak your teammates while you're getting out of that revive. Then going back to Deadshot, for this, I'd recommend kind of the inverse of what we said for the SVD. So Dead Head is a good option here for a further increase in critical damage just at base. And that's nice because Deadshot without that augment only gives you a 10% damage boost to your crits, which feels kind of low, right? So having a bit of a boost on that major is nice. Or you could use dead again to get a little bit more ammo back in your magazine as you're firing. And then for the minor on dead shot, I would recommend increased damage to armor pieces via dead break, or you could do something a little sneaky here, and you could put dead draw on to reduce your hipfire spread, and then you could take your weapon's sight off to free up an attachment pip, and then whack on this laser instead, so you have an even tighter hipfire, and that way your hipfire is now your ADS. Like, you just don't need to ADS anymore. You can zoom around like crazy and beam zombies regardless. And then from there, it's a lot of the sort of same stuff. So stamina up to go fast with hot foot and PhD. On this one, I'd recommend Tribologist because your slide distance and speed are increased, and you're already fast with this, so you're going to go even faster. And I'd also, with this particular build, do Dr. Ram, just because, as you can see in the gameplay here, I'm using it to get out of this kind of sketchy situation while I have Rampage Inducer on as well, and it's just working for me. Like, it's just consistent. I'm a linebacker, baby. Wait, is that what that means? I don't know. I play football, dude. Anyway, that's good. And I'd also really recommend you use Elemental Pop once again, and it's the same deal as usual. Citrus Focus, Chill, Berry. Our next weapon on the list is the Sigma, which you guys might think is insane, and if it is, then I don't know. Tell me that in the comments down below. You know, say it with your chest. It's fine. This is a safe space. But while you type that, I'm going to just prove you wrong real quick, okay? So, you should be using the Sigma like it's a big red button that you just press to kill all the zombies in front of you. And what that means is that you should be thinking about getting as many zombies to be in front of you as possible before you start firing it. That way, you're being effective with the amount of ammo that you've got, and you're getting massive multi-kills as well, so you'll get a bunch of medals and a bunch of XP for doing that. And it's also just crazy fun. But if you don't do that and you try and use it to just kill a couple zombies here and there, yeah, you're gonna have a bad time. And that might be why you hate the Sigma, if you do hate the Sigma. And the nice thing about the Sigma is that we don't need to spend any time talking about attachments because there aren't any for it. It's just a massive nuke cannon. It's great. For ammo mod here, it's a weird one. You're kind of blowing everything up, so you don't really need the damage, so it is a utility situation again. And I think you probably want to choose the ammo mod based on what's going to be difficult for you to kill, which is going to be elites. So if you're playing Liberty Falls, use Napalm. Just hands down, that's the way to go. Whereas if you're playing Terminus, I think then you should probably pick Deadwire because it's going to proc more frequently than Shadow Rift is going to do. And seeing as you're not shooting a huge amount, you need those more frequent procs. So those would probably be my recommendations, but Terminus is a little bit more of a preference playstyle type situation. And for both of those, I would put big game on because otherwise those elites are just going to ignore what you're trying to throw at them. Then for perk augments, surprisingly, we don't really care about the PhD augments, which is weird because PhD is essential for this build, but the augments are just not essential. So do what you like there. Then on Speed Cola, I would highly recommend quick swap so you can swap weapons faster because this thing's a bit chunky. And I also think the supercharged major is the way to go here because you want those field upgrades to be recharged. And then we can combo this build with Frenzied Guard. And in Frenzied, we're going to use the Frenzy Fire major to use ammo from stock, so you turn into a weapon of mass destruction when you have Frenzied active. Like, it's crazy. You can just go to town, and this also means that you're sort of getting the free fire Gobblegums usage that people are using for the Terminus boss fight right now, but for free, and you're not cheesing. You're just doing what the game is allowing you to do. Now, going back to perks, this is a rare instance where I think you should not choose Citrus Focus, just because Imperil Peach or Electric Cherry are both really good options here. So having enemies trigger a random ammo mod when they hit you is going to balance out the fact that you're not going to be triggering as many ammo mods because of how rarely you're going to be firing the weapon. And then alternatively, if you just want a little bit more, I don't know, sustain, let's say, then Electric Cherry could be useful because then you fire off your shot, any remaining zombies might get stunned when you hit that reload. So give these 3 builds a try, let me know what you think, and leave your comments down below with any tweaks that you would make. And anyone who posts a really good idea about any kind of weapon build in the game will get a shout out in my next builds video.